Be prepared. Do you think we can ever be prepared for this life and this human condition? Life doesn't come with a handbook, does it? When you're born, you don't get your own customized version of a little handbook that tells you how to approach everything, how to solve all of the problems that occur, how to experience the conditions of life from a spiritual perspective, and how to really know the depth of your soul and your soul's intention, and how to live that practice, live that depth, and live that life in the human condition here on earth. We don't get all of that when we come out. And often we find ourselves spiritually challenged, or challenged just by the human condition itself. In the book Embracing Uncertainty with Susan Jeffers, she says this: I maintain that without a connection to the spiritual part of who we are, there will always exist a deep emptiness that nothing in the outside world can fill. Without a connection to the spiritual part of who we are, we will always feel a sense of dissatisfaction and yearning as we expect our husbands, our wives, our children, our job, food, money, or whatever to fill us up. But nothing does the trick. Also, without that connection, there exists a deep-seated fear of all that is happening or could happen in our lives, making it very difficult to embrace all of the uncertainty in our world. She goes on to say in another section, if you want to get rid of fear, loneliness, and a sense of separation and find your way home, you have to have a deep commitment and intention to totally change the way you think about the world around you. I believe also that we have to have a full and total intention to learn and dive into the world within us. And I actually don't think that we ever get rid of these things. And maybe in the Christ consciousness, the Buddha consciousness, right, when we're in this planet, but we are totally all of the time embodying and embracing the highest awakened consciousness available to each one of us. Maybe then we are fully free from it. But I believe on the spiritual journey, on the spiritual path, we don't necessarily get rid of these things, but the walk and the spiritual journey is about getting used to them. It's about learning ourselves, learning about the human condition and the spiritual condition, and getting so comfortable with it, becoming so aware of it, that it no longer frightens us and sends us into spinning chaos. It no longer invites us to imagine that we have ripped off the connection to God or to our spiritual nourishment or to our spiritual source, and that we are floundering alone. It no longer tempts us to believe in the possibility that we didn't come with a handbook. See, I believe that we did come with a handbook. It's the scripture written upon our hearts. It's the principle of oneness. And it's knowing that the world around us is a living Bible. The world around us, if we see with spiritual vision and if we open our hearts to awareness, the world around us holds every key, and the world within us is where our inner freedom lies. She goes on to say, there is something inside of you, a higher self, that is always there to handle elegantly, beautifully, intelligently, powerfully, and lovingly anything and everything that can ever happen to you. Do you believe that? Is there something within you, an aspect of self, that can handle anything and everything elegantly, gracefully, with wisdom, with mindfulness, that can show up in you, through you, and as you, as we meet the world around us and the world within us? Charles Fillmore called faith the perceiving power of the mind linked with the ability to shape substance, leading us to the idea that it is the principle and the power of faith itself that can move energy, that can create in the external. But we have to have the perceiving power of mind first. We have to be able to perceive that we are not separate. We have to be able to perceive this idea, this deep spiritual, powerful idea that we have access at all times and places to an inexhaustible resource, to an inexhaustible, nourishing power and presence that so many call God. But it needs no name at all. And it takes no offense at whatever you or I may call it. It is, in fact, what we are swimming in. It is what we are made of. It is the everything of the universe. It is spiritual substance. It is wisdom itself. It is love itself. So we're not here necessarily to get rid of all the discomforts, to get rid of all of the fear, to get rid of everything and everything that might come up, so that when it does come up again, we feel completely disappointed in ourselves. We feel like we're back in the kindergarten aspect of the spiritual journey rather than getting our PhD, but that we develop a more mature spiritual approach to life. That we become rooted and grounded in our spiritual practice. That we consistently and frequently choose to stay out of the realms of comparison and competition, materialism, all of the ego ideas that keep us in separation, that keep us in discord, that invite us into chaos, and that cause harm. And that when we do them, when we find ourselves doing them, we can approach it with gentleness. We can approach it with awareness. Rather than being consumed by it, we can learn and grow from it. It's about stepping into our higher self, acknowledging that we do have a lower self. We can come from places and spaces that are not helpful, healthful, growth-oriented. And that's simply part of the human condition. One of my favorite authors, Wayne, well, I guess just one of my favorite men of consciousness, actually, rather than specifically author. It is his heart that draws me to his practice and his teachings. And that's Wayne Mueller. And in the book, Legacy of the Heart, Wayne Mueller says this: if we seek safety within ourselves and not in the manipulation of environment and circumstance, then our practice becomes a pilgrimage to uncover a deep and abiding faith in our own gifts, our own strength, our own spirit. If faith reflects a confidence in our own inner strength, then as we cultivate faith, we become more able to accept whatever we are given. Regardless of whether we are given pleasure or pain, sorrow or delight, we gradually come to feel confident that we are strong, resilient, and creative enough to survive and endure the perils of being human. So what do you consider the perils of being human? Have you looked at that? And you may even sit here and think in your mind, well, I don't think of anything as far as a peril of being human. I take them all as part of my spiritual practice and opportunities for growth. But what brings you into fear? What delivers you into chaos? What awakens your lower self? Those are feelings, experiences that are generally triggered by an idea that we believe in perils of the human condition that are somehow wrong or aberrations of life or problems. So is there a different perspective? Is there another way to experience some of the things that we call difficulties, problems, crisis? And how can we see everything in what Susan Jeffers calls a life-affirming way? How can we see everything as a catalyst for what she says can be growing our power and our love, growing how we show up in the world, growing our spiritual strengths? She shares a story about Ram Dass, and his experience with his father and caring for his father. And I want to just share a little bit of that with you today. She says, Ram Dass gives us a wonderful example. A number of years ago, he chose to play a major part in the care of his dying father. In order to do this, he had to give up his plans for participating in certain spiritual studies that he had been looking forward to with eager anticipation. But he said that instead of being an obstacle to his spiritual practice, the care of his father was the spiritual practice. The care of his father was the spiritual practice. He explored ways to honor his father, to keep his heart open, to handle the differences in their personalities, and to see it all as a gift, all lessons. And he used all the tools that were available to him to keep on the path of learning and growing at those times when his lower self tried to take over and tried to make him feel sorry for himself. How often in life do we have the most amazing opportunity to learn and grow, but instead we just call it a problem? Instead, we just think it's something to be solved or something to be moved through, like, when I get through this, then. Rather than recognizing that, friends, this is life living itself. So many of us get excited about signing up for a class, signing up for a workshop, going to a spiritual service, taking a spiritual growth seminar. I mean, how excited would you be if someone gifted you to a $5,000 spiritual retreat with your favorite teacher, with your favorite leader, with your favorite being? Right? Where you got to go and you got to be cared for. It was uniquely designed for your spiritual growth, for your evolution. It had within it all of the practices that would awaken you so that the rest of your life would flourish in even greater ways than you could imagine. If I said right now, the first person to wave their hand or post on social media gets that $5,000. Yeah, you'd be excited. I'd be excited. We'd probably be fully excited. All parts of ourselves go, foot on the gas. But when life says the university is free, you have an opportunity to get your PhD in caring for another, in being a caregiver, in being a parent, in healing work, in prosperity work. You fill in the blank. In relationship work. When we're given the opportunity to get a free PhD in grief work, in the power of now, we often go in trembling. The opportunity for each one of us is to realize that whatever life looks like right now, this is your gift if you're willing to unwrap it. This is more valuable than a seminar. It is more customized to you and for you than what anyone outside of you could ever create and make up for you. You are a unique, repeatable expression of God, a unique, unrepeatable, I said repeatable, unrepeatable expression of spirit and source. And this moment, this now moment always, this now moment later, this now moment that came before, this now moment always is unrepeatable. And I believe perfectly designed for our evolution, our awakening, our awareness, our growth, our abundance, our freedom, our light. We are so known in what I call the universal mind that I believe if we are awake, if we look at the world around us and the world within us, we will be guided, we will be nourished, we will be supported, and we can see that what we were looking for the whole time was always right there. Now, sometimes the human condition and the ego mind wants it in the areas we want to have it. You know, sometimes we want abundance, but we don't want it in one area of life. We want growth, but we don't want it in that area. We want passion, but we're looking for passion. Well, I know passion is supposed to come through my job. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at all the things that brought me passion in the past. But right there is passion and opportunity and adventure sitting at my door with a relationship or with a new job or whatever it is, but I'm too tired to start a new job, or I'm too old to start a new relationship. I'm too this, too that, to whatever it is, to just dive in and say, yes, thank you. Here I am. Life is a spiritual practice. Relationship is a spiritual practice. The world is a living Bible. It's a scripture that is alive. So we can retreat. We can try to manipulate the external environment to please us. We can avoid the work in front of us while hoping to go to a silent meditation retreat to grow. But life is the practice, and it's happening in real time. Susan Jeffers says that when we engage in this practice, we will see that all is well. When we engage in the spiritual practice, when we apply spiritual tools, we will see that all is well. I think what we will see is that we are given the assurance that what we are looking for is right here, or what is looking for us is right here. And if we can't see it, we simply need to shift what we're looking with. Are we looking with the part of ourselves that wants to stay comfortable? With the self that thinks if there is a challenge, if there is something that I experience that brings me into fear or chaos, that somehow is not as valuable as what I experience as joyful? We have the invitation to stop looking at life as being full of things and problems and relationships to be solved. To stop believing in the possibility that we can be off the path. To stop saying that these things that are happening are not life living itself. And instead, to breathe into our spiritual nourishment, to cultivate the spiritual strength, to show up fully and completely in this now moment, and to simply whisper to the depths of our souls, I see it. This is life living itself. Here I am. This is life living itself. Here I am. When we begin to do that, we begin to see that we have spiritual tools, that we've been applying them all along, and that we no longer will buy into, believe in, or agree with the story that we are somehow insufficient for the task, that we're somehow not perfectly designed to show up for everything that is occurring in this now moment. And when we do that, there is a shift In our center of faith, there is a shift in the perceiving power of mind because we come from a different place. And we begin to experience the truth of this statement that faith is the perceiving power of the mind linked with the ability to shape substance and to shape our world. So are we going to gather the tools? What has worked for you in your life? What wakes you up? You have gotten your PhD in so many areas of life. Have you gotten your PhD in the tools that serve you? What brings you home? What draws you back to center? What grounds you? And are you committed to that? Or are you still spending time engaging in things that lead you into turbulent waters unnecessarily? Susan Jeffers recommends that we get an actual box, and in that actual box, like a treasure chest, like a toolbox, we put in little notes or ideas. We put in all the things that have served us, all the things that have helped us, even ideas that other people have for how to get through things. Even, I imagine, quotes that ground you. Maybe some items that center you, that remind you of what life is. Can you create a spiritual toolbox customized for you? It doesn't have to be a physical toolbox. It could be a note on your phone or on your computer, or a handwritten note in your notebook. So that when you feel off center, when you feel off balance, when you feel fearful, when you feel disconnected, you can pull it out and look and see, these are the things that in the past have brought me back to center, have woken me up. Maybe it's a phone call to a particular person. Maybe it's a spiritual counseling appointment. Maybe it's a therapy like EMDR. Maybe it's a book. Maybe it's a moment of meditation. But you can go through that list or simply pick something out and say, sweet Spirit, what do you have for me in this moment? Because I know that I am not left alone here. I know that I am not abandoned. I know that I didn't arrive without a manual. I didn't arrive without a guide. So thank you. And here I am. Because you are a unique, unrepeatable expression of God. Can we also commit to being explorers, being learners, to always be open to new tools and trying things on? To have a commitment, to be open-minded and open-hearted, to continue to learn about ourselves, learn about the world around us, learn about the spiritual condition and the spiritual journey. What is at stake? What is at risk? Our freedom, our security, and our peace of mind. Our freedom, our security, and our peace of mind. Susan Jeffers says, the only kind of security we can ultimately ever have comes from within. The only kind of freedom that we can ultimately ever have comes from within. Neither has anything to do with what is happening in the outside world. Maybe that's a note that goes in the toolbox. My peace of mind, or my freedom, or my security ultimately has nothing to do with what is happening in the outside world. And we pull that out of the box, and the moment we pull it out of the box, and the moment we read it, there is a, okay, if I find this to be true, then even in the midst of this, even in the midst of this physical pain, even in the midst of this emotional discomfort, even in the midst of this relationship discord, even in the midst of this interesting mind, even in the midst of this curious situation, even in the midst of this experience, even in the midst of this challenging circumstance, I have everything I need. And my divine birthright to have peace and to be grounded is just as much available to me, in me, through me, and as me, as if to my ego mind, my life seemed perfect right now. Because in fact, I am so known in the heart of all hearts. And I am so connected in this universal oneness that I am being sourced into this now moment to experience all of its gifts. She says the journey to the higher self is a very exciting one and a very necessary one if we are to live peacefully in a world filled with great mystery and uncertainty. When we approach all things with a spiritual mindset, all is well, no matter what is happening in our lives. So welcome to the world filled with great mystery and to a practice that allows us to show up for it. Namaste.